Countdown to Halloween 2023, featuring eerie and uncanny tales of haunts, ghosts, and suspense. October is finally here. Join us all month for special Halloween presentations on Storylink Radio's YouTube channel as we count down to Halloween 2023. Keep a close eye on YouTube alerts or you'll miss one. Celebrate October with us right here and now. Tonight's presentation from Storylink Radio. No laughing matter. Everyone has something that they're really good at. Gordy Davis was probably the best at being just plain mean. Gordy was bigger than the other kids in his class, and he always came out the winner in a fight, but that wasn't good enough for Gordy. He and his four closest friends, Pat, Larry, Jasper, and Roy, spent hours figuring out practical jokes and that would make other people miserable. The more mean-spirited the prank, the better they liked it. They had formed a club called the Jokers, and each of the boys wore a cap adorned with that name. Now, most of the other kids in class tried to stay out of their way and were careful not to annoy them. Most of the other kids, in fact, did everything they could to stay out of the Joker's way and be careful not to annoy them. No one ever told an adult about the spiteful things the boys did. Some actually did favors for the Jokers, hoping to stay on their good side. Mitch Harrigan did Gordy's math homework every day. Even that didn't always save Mitch, though. The week before, Mitch had gotten several answers wrong, and Gordy received a C-. On Friday, Mitch found his bicycle wedged among the low branches of a tree. The Jokers stood around and had a good laugh while he tried to get it down. At first, no one would risk helping Mitch, but when the bike started to fall, the new kid in town, Rick Porter, raced forward and steadied it. Ricks are always such good guys, aren't they? He then helped Mitch lift the bicycle down to the ground while Gordy glared. Rick and his parents had moved to town during the summer, and this was his first year at Washington Elementary. It hadn't taken him long to make friends. He was easygoing, fun to be with. He was also one of the few kids who did not back down from the Jokers. For a while, Gordy had avoided Rick. Now he'd have to be dealt with, too. So Monday morning, Gordy joined his buddies on the playground before class began. "Did you get it?" he whispered to Roy. "Yeah." The boy proudly held up a small brown paper bag. He turned his head from side to side to be sure no one was watching. He reached in the bag and pulled out a large glass jar. It was half filled with squirming mealworms. Jasper made an ugly face. "Oh, yuck, those are disgusting." "Perfect," Gordy smirked. "This should teach that little creep to mind his own business." "And if it doesn't, I've got something else in mind. Now remember," he said as he put a hand on Larry's shoulder, "you wait until everyone else put their things away on the shelf, and you go back like you're going to put your stuff away too, got it?" "Yeah, I know." Larry shifted uneasily. "Well, nobody's looking at dump the creepy crawlers into Rick's lunchbox. What if I get caught? How come I have to do it?" Gordy tightened his hold on the boy's shoulder. "Because I said so. Besides, your section on the shelf is right next to Rick's. Nobody noticed what you're doing. I'll see to that. Now let's go." The boys joined the group of children waiting in the school hall. Once Mrs. Jandrew unlocked and opened the door, they all filed in. Chattering and laughing, the kids walked back to the back of the room. Lining the back wall was a tall set of wooden shelves divided into sections. Each section had a student's name written above it on a paper label. The cubicles were used to store coats and extra books and lunch boxes or anything else not needed during class. Larry watched as Rick stuffed his baseball jacket into the space under his name and then set his lunchbox down. Once everyone was sitting down, Larry stood nervously and picked up his sweater and the paper sack Roy had given him. He sauntered to the shelf and, with his back to the room, slipped out the glass jar and unscrewed the lid. At that moment, Gordy jumped up, pointed at the teacher's desk, and yelled, "Mrs. Jandrew, a mouse!" Several of the kids squealed, and Mrs. Jandrew hastily pushed back her chair. During the commotion, Larry opened the lid of Rick's lunchbox, tipped in the worms, and snapped the box shut. He was back in his seat by the time the teacher was announced. There was nothing under a desk. Yeah, well, guess I was mistaken," Jordy grinned as he sat down. He turned to look at his accomplice, Larry, and Larry nodded slightly at him. At lunchtime, the Jokers could hardly control their laughter as they watched Rick settle at a table with several friends. Rick had purchased a container of fruit punch and opened it while he listened to one of the group explain the gory details of a movie he had seen over the weekend. It was about a town that had been attacked by thousands of deadly snakes. As he described a scene in which the hero woke up and found his bed covered with slithering reptiles, Rick, without looking, popped open his lunchbox and reached inside. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Ah! He howled, spilling the entire carton of punch down the front of his shirt. Rick yanked his hand away as if he'd been bitten. The lunchbox tipped up onto its side, and several dozen wriggling mealworms rolled out. Everyone at the table shrieked. The boy who'd been telling the story jumped up so quickly that his chair tipped over and clattered to the floor. The uproar spread to the kids seated nearby. They squealed and backed away, scraping their chairs across the floor in alarm or tipping them over, adding to the chaos. Gordy couldn't hold back. He laughed so hard he doubled over in his chair. When things quieted down, he sat up to see Rick standing over him. You did that, didn't you? The enraged boy demanded. Gordy smirked. What's the matter? Can't take a joke? It wasn't a joke, and it wasn't funny. Rick was so angry, almost in tears. His hands were bunched into fists. Stupid. Like you. Gordy rose slowly. He towered over the boy. Take that back. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of you or anything else. Gordy's mouth twisted into a crooked scowl. Then slowly, a different expression washed over his face. Okay. Prove it. What? You're right. That was a mean thing for me to do. I'll tell you what. If you can prove that you really aren't afraid of anything, if you accept my challenge, then I'll apologize and I'll never pick on you again. We could even be friends. Gordy's pals exchanged surprised glances. I don't want to be your friend, Rick growled. But you would apologize in front of everyone? Yeah. You wouldn't bother me again? Guaranteed. What sort of challenge? Gordy lowered his voice conspiratorially. Have you ever heard of the Banwell place? Rick nodded. Everyone knew of the old house. It was one of the first things he had learned from the other kids when he came to town. Most people avoided even walking past it if they could. No one was certain who had been the original owner, but old Mr. Banwell was supposed to have lived in it for at least 30 years. He'd been pretty eccentric and even fancied himself like a warlock or something. People said that on some nights they could see weird lights moving through the halls and hear strange noises. Nobody really knew how the old man had died either. One day about 10 years ago, the postman had found Banwell face down out in his front yard. When he rolled Banwell over, the expression frozen on the dead man's face had been one of unearthly terror. Well, Gordy went on, all you has to do is spend 1 hour in there, starting at midnight. Rick's jaw dropped open. Alone? My parents never let me do that. Don't worry. I'll have a sleepover at my house this weekend. My parents won't even notice that we sneak out. It'll be over before you know it, if you're really brave enough. Deal? He extended his hand. Rick reached out and took it. Yeah, deal. After school, Gordy and his cohorts walked home. At first they were silent, then Pat spoke up. Are you really going to apologize to that little jerk in front of everybody? Nah, Gordy said, shaking his head. He'll never make it through an hour in that house. But what if he does? Jasper complained. He won't. We're going to fix it so he won't stay in there more than a few minutes. I've got it all figured out. The gleam of evil in Gordy's eyes made the other boys shudder. Over the next few days, the gang worked on props for the weekend. On Saturday morning, the boys slipped into the Banwell house through a slide window and set everything up. I don't like it in here, Larry whined. I don't know if this is such a good idea. Roy was making a sizable stain on the wall with fake blood. It's a great idea. If this place is so creepy during the day, imagine how bad it'll be at night, eh? Particularly when we're finished up with it, eh? He winked at Jasper, who had just taken a large dead rat from his shoebox. Where should I put this thing? Jasper asked, holding the rat by the tail as far away from him as he could. Gordy looked around. I don't know. Put it near the window. When the chick flashlight goes out, he'll probably try to open the curtains to get more light. Pat shuddered. He might step on it. That's gross. Yeah, but that'll be the best gag of all. Gordy slipped into a tape into a complicated-looking player he had hidden in a closet near the staircase. He stood back and pushed a button on a small remote control that he held in his hand. At first, there was a soft, eerie shuffling noise. Then came a sound of ragged breathing that seemed to be coming closer. That's great, Roy giggled. Suddenly, a horrible moan issued from the tape player and filled the room. It's enough for me. I'm getting out of here. Laughing and horsing around, they ran most of the way back to Gordy's house. Now, that night, Rick's parents dropped him off at Gordy's house for the sleepover. The boys spent the evening watching a scary movie and telling ghost stories. As midnight approached, Gordy began a tale about the Banwell house. Folks say that old Mr. Banwell used to conjure up spirits and stuff. After he died, his daughter took over the house. She was some sort of a professor or something and didn't believe the things that people were saying, like about the lights and the noises. Everything seemed to be all right at first, but then on the first night of the new moon, something happened. It was a night kind of like the night, you know. The Hansons who lived down the hill from the old place said that it was shortly after midnight when they heard the moaning, that horrible moaning. In the morning, they found her, Banwell's daughter, wandered in the woods behind the house. Her long black hair had turned completely white. She kept talking about the thing, begging it to leave her alone. From what she said, the sheriff figured it had one arm and one terrible glowing eye, and it smelled like... yeah, well, it was that old musty smell that comes from something that's been buried for a long, long time. The rumor is that a couple years later, they found another body just sitting on the porch. It was a kid who had been missing for a while. At least they thought it was him. You see, it didn't have no head. Of course, that can't be true. Gordy paused for an effect. Or can it? With an exaggerated shiver, Gordy looked at the clock. Come on, it's time. One at a time, the boys eased out of the bedroom window. No one spoke as they approached the dark, brooding house. The windows stared down at them like demon eyes that crept up the walk to the porch. Here, you'll need this. Gordy slipped a flashlight into Rick's hand. You have to go through that open window there, he said as he pointed to the one near the door, the one that the jokers had used in the morning when they set up the prank. It's the only way in or out. Everything else is locked or boarded up. We'll stay here to be sure you don't sneak out, eh? He looked at the glowing numbers on his watch. Both hands pointed straight up. Go! Rick didn't say anything, but he was trembling. Now see, obviously this is Rick Porter and not Rick Quarkin. Rick Quarkin would have brought popcorn and been totally thrilled and excited about this opportunity, but this is Rick Porter. And Rick Porter was trembling as he crawled over the windowsill. He began to have a change of heart. With a shaking hand, he played the beam of light around the deserted room. He froze as he noticed the brick-red blood splashed against the wall. Forcing his feet to move, Rick edged along the opposite wall. His foot nudged something soft. Just before the flashlight failed, he saw the body of a rat. Outside, Gordy pressed a button. Inside, there was a soft, muffled, scraping noise, and Rick backed toward the open window as the sound of ragged breathing seemed to come from everywhere. The moan had only begun when Rick scrambled back out of the window and down the path. Again proving Rick P. and not Rick Q. Nothing's worth staying in there, he gasped. You can keep your apology and your stupid club. What did I tell you? Gordy gloated to the others as he watched Rick disappear down the block. The boys exchanged high fives. Larry patted Gordy on the back and chuckled. Can't wait to tell everyone tomorrow about the look on his face that came flying out of that window. Now, can we get out of here? This place is giving me the willies. Everybody laughed in agreement, including Gordy. Yeah, sure we can. Just as soon as we get the tape recorder. Laughter stopped. You mean go in there? Now? Pat gawked at Gordy. Of course now. You think I'm going to leave it there? Larry started to back away from the others. I'm not going in there. Me neither, Jasper whispered. Gordy looked from one to the other. What's the matter with you guys? Roy? Come on. Roy shook his head. You're so brave, Gordy. Why don't you go in alone? Well, then I guess I will. What a bunch of chickens. Bark, bark, bark. Angrily, Gordy ducked into the open window. Once inside, he switched on the flashlight. It sputtered to life, then failed, leaving him in shadow once again. Yeah, stupid thing. It's no better than one I gave Rick. Slowly, Gordy eased forward into the room and moved toward the staircase. The boards creaked under his feet. If there was something in this house, it would surely know he was here, too. He brushed the thought aside. There's nothing. There's nothing in here. There's nothing in here, Gordy assured himself. That was when he heard the slight shuffling sound that seemed to be moving closer. He felt in his pocket. The remote control was gone. Yeah, right, guys. Very funny. Ah. A ragged breathing began by the time he reached the closet door. Gripping the handle, he opened it. Oh, yeah, that's funny. He wrinkled his nose and he detected a powerful, musty odor. Ah, dang. I didn't notice that smell this morning. Ugh. He knelt down to pick up his tape recorder. As he heard the low, chilling moan behind him, his brain barely registered the tape recorder was not running. The taste of fear welled up in Gordy's mouth as he whirled to stare into the single glowing eye of horror. The foul, putrid stench grew overpowering as the huge, shadowy creature loomed over its crouching victim. Cloaked in rotten rags, its skeletal arm darted out and gripped Gordy's throat in one clawed hand. The thing drew him across the floor, opening its gaping mouth to reveal many rows of serrated teeth. I get so few visitors here. It rasped, lifting the terrified boy completely off the ground. But those who join me never leave. I guess the joke is on you. And so that was No Laughing Matter. You've just heard tonight's story from Storylink Radio's Countdown to Halloween 2023. Remember to come back for our next tale. Many more stories of all genres available to listen to and read along with now on our website at www.storylinkradio.com. Visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/storylinkradio. And visit our podcast for easy mobile listening anywhere, anytime. Just search for Storylink Radio on your favorite podcast provider. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that alert bell for Storylink Radio.